The lawyer's voice was flat, routine, like reading a grocery list. To Victoria Hale, the primary residence, all financial accounts, and investment properties. Audrey sat in the corner chair, the one closest to the door. She didn't remember choosing it. To Marcus Hale, the business holdings and remaining assets. Victoria didn't look at her. Neither did Marcus. No one in the room did. To Audrey Hale, the property at 14 Orchard Lane. Millbrook, that was it. 3 seconds. Her entire inheritance. Marcus laughed. Quiet, but she heard it. Victoria's lawyer whispered something. Papers shuffled. Audrey signed where they pointed. The pen felt heavier than it should. Outside, it was raining. She didn't have an umbrella. She stood under the awning and watched people walk past with theirs. 14 Orchard Lane. Her father had never mentioned it. Not once. If you've ever felt passed over by those who should have stood by you, you're not alone. Let me know where you're watching from today. 3 hours on back roads. Gas station coffee gone cold in the cup holder. Millbrook wasn't a town. It was a stretch of buildings that hadn't given up yet. One main street, a hardware store with a faded awning, a diner with a hand-painted sign. Audrey pulled into a gas station and asked the woman behind the counter for directions. Orchard Lane. The woman looked her over, took her time. The old Hale place. Yes, you family. His daughter. The woman's mouth pressed into a line. She pointed east. Didn't say anything else. Audrey found the house at the end of a gravel road. She parked and didn't get out. Not right away. The grass came up past her knees. The porch sagged on one side. 2 windows on the second floor were broken, covered with plastic that had yellowed and torn. Paint peeled from the siding in long strips. The roof had a visible dip in the middle. This was it. This was what he left her. She got out. The front steps groaned under her weight. The door was unlocked. It swung open with a push. Inside, dust covered everything. Thick, undisturbed for years. Maybe the smell hit her first mold. Old wood, something like wet newspaper. A couch with cushions that had collapsed inward. A television set from another decade. Photos on the wall she couldn't see clearly in the dim light. Her throat tightened. She pressed her palm against the door frame. This was what he thought she deserved. She walked through the kitchen, cabinets hanging open, a coffee mug still on the counter, brown ring at the bottom. Then she stopped. One cabinet door, the one nearest the basement stairs. It was open wider than the others, and around its handle, the dust was smeared. Fingerprints. Recent. She looked down. Scuff marks in the grime, leading to the basement door. Audrey turned toward the window. Across the overgrown yard, through the broken fence, an old woman stood on the neighboring porch. White hair, cardigan, watching. Their eyes met. The woman turned and went inside, closed her door. Audrey looked back at the basement. The door was slightly ajar. Someone had been in this house. Recently, Audrey woke with her neck bent wrong. The couch cushions had given up years ago. Her spine ached from the metal frame pressing through. Gray light came through the windows. Morning. She'd slept in her clothes. Jacket still on? The house was cold. No heat. No electricity she could find working. A knock at the front door. She sat up. Listened. Another knock. 3 sharp raps. She crossed the living room. The floorboards complained under each step. Through the side window, she saw a man on the porch. Button-down shirt. Clipboard. County seal on his jacket. She opened the door. Miss Hale. He didn't wait for confirmation. I'm with the county building department. I have a notice for you. He held out a folded document. Official seal. Red stamp across the corner. What is this? Violation notice? This property has multiple code failures. Roof structure, foundation cracks, electrical system. You have 30 days to address the issues or file a formal appeal. After that, an enforcement order takes effect. Audrey unfolded the paper. The words blurred. She read the header 3 times before it registered. 30 days, I just got here yesterday. Someone filed a complaint. He shifted his weight. Anonymous. My hands are tied. Anonymous. That's what the form says. He clicked his pen. You can contest it at the county office, but you'll need documentation. Probably a lawyer. He walked back to his truck. Audrey stood in the doorway holding the paper until his engine faded down the gravel road. An hour later, she was at the county building. The waiting room smelled like floor wax and old coffee. Plastic chairs bolted to the floor. A woman behind the counter with reading glasses on a chain. I need to file an appeal. Audrey placed the notice on the counter. The woman looked at it, then at a computer screen. Keys clicked. This was filed yesterday morning. Before you received the notice. That's not possible. I didn't even arrive until yesterday afternoon. I'm just telling you what the system shows. More clicking. Appeal window is open, but you'll need to submit a formal response with a licensed contractor's assessment or legal representation. I don't have a contractor. I don't have a lawyer. The woman looked at the clock on the wall, then back at Audrey. There's a list of local attorneys on the bulletin board. County can't recommend anyone specific. Can you tell me who filed the complaint? Anonymous complaints are confidential. Someone is trying to take this house from me. I just inherited it. The woman's expression didn't change. Ma'am, I understand this is frustrating, but the process is the process. You have 30 days. Audrey drove back to the house. She sat in her car for a long time. The steering wheel was cold under her hands. She called the lawyer who had handled her father's estate. The receptionist put her on hold. Then, I'm sorry, Miss Hale. Miss, property disputes are outside our scope. You'll need to find local counsel. The line went dead. Inside the house. Audrey sat on the floor in the living room. Back against the wall. Knees pulled up. The notice lay on the ground beside her. 30 days. No money for repairs. No money for a lawyer. No one to call. She looked around the room. The dust. The decay. Years of neglect. Why had her father kept this place? Why leave it to her? She stood, started opening drawers, cabinets, looking for anything, bank statements, documents, some explanation. The kitchen yielded nothing. Old takeout menus, expired coupons, a drawer full of rubber bands and dead batteries, the living room closet, winter coats that smelled like mildew, boxes of Christmas decorations with mice damage. She moved to the dining room, a china cabinet with nothing inside but dust and a single cracked plate. Then she noticed the rug, large, faded, Persian pattern. It covered most of the floor between the dining table and the wall. The edges were frayed. One corner had been folded over. She grabbed the corner and pulled. The rug was heavier than expected. She dragged it aside, revealing the wooden floor beneath. Dusty, water-stained, old, except one section, in the corner, near the baseboard. A single floorboard looked different. The wood was lighter, less warped. The nails were shinier. Someone had replaced this board, not years ago, recently. Audrey knelt down, ran her fingers along the edge. There was a small gap between this board and the ones around it, just enough to fit her fingernails under. She pulled. The board didn't move. She looked around, found a butter knife in the kitchen, came back, wedged it into the gap. The board lifted. Beneath it, a dark space, maybe 8 inches deep, and inside a metal box, gray, the size of a shoebox, no lock. Her hands were shaking as she lifted it out. She opened the lid. Inside, a single brass key, old, heavy, and beneath it, a piece of paper, folded, yellowed at the edges. She unfolded it. A drawing, hand-sketched. The layout of this house, rooms, doors, walls. But there was something else. A dotted line, leading from the kitchen, down a set of stairs, to a room she hadn't seen, a room that wasn't on any floor plan she'd noticed. And in the corner of the paper, handwriting she recognized. Slanted. The letter G with a long tail. Her father's handwriting. She looked toward the kitchen, toward the basement door that had been slightly open when she arrived. Someone had been looking for this, but they hadn't found it. Her father had hidden something in this house, something he wanted her to find. Audrey stood. The map trembled in her hand. The basement door waited at the end of the hall. She walked toward it. The basement stairs creaked under her weight, each step louder than the last. The handrail was loose. She gripped it anyway. At the bottom, darkness. She pulled out her phone. The flashlight cut a narrow beam through the black. Concrete floor, concrete walls, the smell of damp earth and old cardboard, boxes stacked against the far wall, a water heater in the corner, rust climbing up its sides, a workbench with tools that hadn't been touched in years. She held up the map, compared it to what she saw. According to the drawing, there was a door on the east wall behind the shelving unit. She looked. A metal shelf, industrial gray, bolted to the wall, filled with paint cans, old newspapers, a broken lamp. Nothing unusual, but the map showed a door. Audrey set her phone on the workbench, angling the light toward the shelf. She started pulling things off. Paint cans first heavy, some rusted shut, then the newspapers, yellow and brittle. The lamp. A box of Christmas lights with half the bulbs missing. The shelf was bolted to the wall at 4 points. She looked closer. The bolts on the left side were different, newer, shinier. She pushed against the right side of the shelf. Nothing. She pushed the left side. The shelf swung outward, hinges hidden behind the frame. A door disguised as storage. Behind it, another door. Wood, old, a brass lock in the center. She pulled the key from her pocket. Her hand was steady now. She slid the key into the lock. It turned. The door opened inward. The air that came out was stale, closed up, untouched. She grabbed her phone and stepped through. The room was small, maybe 10 feet by 12. No windows, concrete walls painted gray. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling. She found a pull chain and tugged. Light filled the space. Filing cabinets, 6 of them, gray metal, 4 drawers each, lined up against the back wall. A desk in the corner, an old office chair with cracked vinyl, a lamp with a green glass shade, papers stacked in neat piles. Her father had worked here. She could feel it. The organization, the precision. She walked to the first cabinet, pulled the top drawer, folders, dozens of them, each one labeled with typed tabs, dates, names, categories. She pulled one out at random, opened it, bank statements, account numbers she didn't recognize, transfers highlighted in yellow, notes in her father's handwriting in the margins. She put it back, pulled another. Photographs. A woman she didn't know, getting into a car. Another photo of the same woman at a restaurant. Timestamps in the corner. She moved to the second cabinet. More folders. More documents. Contracts. Legal papers. Some with signatures. Some without. Post-it notes. Attached with questions. Verify date. Cross-reference with account 4471. Original missing copy only. Her father had been investigating something. Someone. She opened the third cabinet. The first folder she saw had a name typed on the tab. Victoria Hale, her stepmother's name. Audrey pulled the folder out. It was thick. 2 inches of documents at least. She set it on the desk. Opened it. The first page was a cover sheet, typed, dated 3 years ago. Evidence file number 1. Victoria Hale. Wire fraud. 2019. She turned the page. Bank records. Transfers from her father's business accounts to accounts in Victoria's name. Accounts Audrey had never heard of. The amounts circled in red: $47,000, $23,500, $156,000. More pages, tax documents with discrepancies highlighted, a letter from an accountant raising concerns, her father's handwritten notes. V. Denied, claimed error, not error. She kept turning. Contracts for property sales that never happened. Invoices for services never rendered. A pattern of small thefts that added up to something large. Her hands were shaking now. She flipped back to the cabinet, counted the folders in the Victoria Hale section. 47 more. She pulled another one. Evidence file number 12, forged documents, 2021. Inside, copies of legal papers, her father's signature on documents he'd never signed. She knew because she recognized the handwriting. It wasn't his. Someone had forged his signature on contracts, on transfers, on his will. She thought about the reading, the lawyer's flat voice, Victoria's confidence, Marcus's laugh. Had they known? Had they planned this? She pulled another folder. Evidence file number 23, estate planning manipulation, 2022. Inside, a copy of a will, her father's will, but not the one the lawyer had read. This one was different. To my daughter, Audrey Hale, I leave the entirety of my estate, including all properties, financial accounts, and business holdings. Everything. He had left her everything. And beneath it, a note clipped to the corner. Original filed with James Dawson, attorney at law, Millbrook. Copy held here. V. Does not know this exists. Audrey sat down in the cracked vinyl chair. The folder open on her lap. Her father had known. He had known what Victoria was doing. He had documented everything. And he had hidden it here, in the one place Victoria didn't want, the one place she thought was worthless. The house wasn't punishment. It was protection. Audrey looked around the room. 48 folders on Victoria alone. 6 cabinets full of evidence. Her father had built a case, piece by piece, year by year, and then he had died. She thought about the fingerprints on the cabinet upstairs, the scuff marks on the floor, the basement door that had been open when she arrived. Someone had been looking for this. Someone knew it existed. They just hadn't found the right door. Audrey picked up another folder. Read another page. Wire fraud, tax evasion, forged signatures, stolen assets. Victoria had taken everything from her, used the law to do it, used a forged will, but now Audrey had proof. She looked at the drawer full of folders, at the desk where her father had sat, alone, building this case. He had given her a weapon. The only question was what she would do with it. She pulled out her phone, searched for the name on the note, James Dawson, attorney at law, Millbrook. The listing showed an office on Main Street, open Monday through Friday. Tomorrow was Monday. Audrey looked back at the filing cabinets, at the years of evidence her father had gathered. Victoria had taken everything, the money, the house, the business, even the dignity of being acknowledged at the reading. Now Audrey had something Victoria didn't know about, something that could change everything. She closed the folder, placed it back in the cabinet. Tomorrow. She would find James Dawson tomorrow. She would find out what her father wanted her to do. Tonight. She had 47 more folders to read. She didn't sleep. The folders spread across the basement floor. One lamp, one chair, hours passing without notice. Wire fraud, tax evasion, forged contracts, embezzlement from the family business. Each folder, another piece. Each document, another year of theft. Victoria had been stealing from her father since the second year of their marriage. Small amounts at first, then larger, then systematic. And he had known. Every transaction was documented. Every forged signature photographed alongside genuine ones for comparison. Every lie cataloged with dates and cross-references. Her father had built this case alone, in this room, in secret. By the time gray light crept through the basement window wells, Audrey had read through 23 folders. Her eyes burned. Her back ached from the vinyl chair. But she understood now. The will Victoria had presented, the one that gave Audrey only this house, was a forgery. The real will, the one her father had filed with a local attorney, left everything to her. The house, the accounts, the business holdings, everything Victoria and Marcus had claimed. Audrey climbed the stairs as the sun came up. She made coffee with supplies she'd bought the day before, stood at the kitchen window watching steam rise from the cup. 28 days until the county enforcement. 28 days to prove the will was forged. 28 days to take back what was hers. At 9 o'clock, she drove into town. James Dawson's office was above a hardware store on Main Street. A narrow staircase with worn carpet. A door with frosted glass and gold lettering. The receptionist was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses and a cardigan. She looked up when Audrey walked in. "Can I help you? I need to see Mr. Dawson. It's about my father's estate." "Robert Hale." The woman's expression shifted. Something flickered behind her eyes. One moment, and she disappeared through a door. Voices murmured. Then the door opened again, and a man stepped out. Mid-60s, white hair, thinning, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, no tie. He looked at Audrey for a long moment before speaking. "Miss Hale, come in." His office was small, bookshelves lined with law texts, a desk covered in papers, a window overlooking the street. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "I knew your father." Audrey sat. "He mentioned you in his notes." Notes. She placed a folder on his desk, one of the thinner ones, enough to explain without overwhelming. He opened it. Read the first page. His face changed. "Where did you find this?" "He left it for me, hidden in the house." Dawson turned another page, then another. His jaw tightened. "How much is there?" 6 filing cabinets, 48 folders on Victoria alone. He set the folder down, removed his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Your father came to me 3 years ago. Asked me to hold a will. The real one. He said if anything happened to him, his daughter would come looking. He said I'd know when the time was right. Do you still have it?" "I have it." He stood, walked to a filing cabinet in the corner, pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to her. Audrey opened it. Inside, a single document, her father's handwriting on the cover page, his signature at the bottom, witnessed and notarized. "To my daughter, Audrey Hale. I leave the entirety of my estate." She read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. "This is real. Notarized 3 years ago, before Victoria's version was filed. Then the one they used at the reading is a forgery?" "Yes." Audrey looked up at him. "Can we prove it?" Dawson gestured at the folder on his desk. "With what you have, we can prove more than that. Wire fraud, tax evasion, document forgery. This isn't just about the will. Miss Hale, this is criminal." "Enough to put her in prison, enough to put her away for years. Audrey sat back in the chair. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs. He knew all this time. He knew what she was doing. He knew. And he built a case, piece by piece. I think he wanted to confront her himself. But then his health. Dawson paused. He ran out of time. So he left it for me. He left it for you. Silence filled the office. Outside, a truck rumbled past on Main Street. Dawson leaned forward. Miss Hale, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Ask, what do you want to do with this? You have options. You can use everything, every folder, every document, and bury her. Criminal charges, civil suits, take back the estate, and destroy her reputation completely. He paused. Or you can use just enough, prove the will was forged, reclaim what's yours, let the legal system handle the rest. And what's the difference? The difference is what you become in the process. Audrey looked at the folder on his desk, at the envelope in her hands. Victoria had taken everything, the money, the respect, the acknowledgement of being Robert Hale's daughter. She had stood in that lawyer's office and watched Audrey sign away her inheritance with a smile she thought no one noticed. She deserves everything that's coming to her. Maybe she does. But that's not what I asked. Audrey met his eyes. I'll think about it. Take your time, but not too much. He leaned back. People like Victoria Hale don't wait around. If she finds out you have this, she'll come at you with everything she has. She already filed an anonymous complaint with the county, trying to condemn the house. Dawson's expression hardened. Then she suspects something. She's trying to force you out before you find what your father left. She's too late. Maybe, but she doesn't know that yet. And the moment she does, this gets a lot more complicated. Audrey stood, tucked the envelope into her bag. I'll bring you the rest of the files. All of them. I'll clear my schedule. She walked to the door, stopped. Mr. Dawson, my father trusted you with this. He did. Why? Dawson looked at her for a long moment, something sad in his eyes. Because I was his friend, and because he knew when the time came, I would help his daughter do the right thing. He paused. Whatever that turns out to be. Audrey drove back to the house with the windows down. The spring air was cool against her face. Her hands were steady on the wheel now. She had proof. She had a lawyer. She had 28 days. For the first time since the reading, she felt something other than small. She felt dangerous. Inside the folder, a letter, handwritten, 3 pages, folded neatly. Her father's handwriting, the slant, the long-tailed G's, the way he pressed hard in down strokes. And beneath the letter, another document, legal paper, a will, different from the one Dawson had shown her, older, more personal. She unfolded the letter first. Her hands were steady. She didn't know why. Audrey, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you found what I left behind. She read the words slowly, each one landing somewhere in her chest. I knew what Victoria would do. I knew before she did. I watched her for years. collecting evidence, documenting every theft, every lie, every forged signature. I could have stopped her. I could have confronted her, divorced her, taken everything back, but I didn't. I waited because I needed to know something first. Audrey turned the page. The paper trembled in her grip. I needed to know what kind of person you would become when you had power over someone who hurt you. The files in this room, they're not a weapon. They're a test. You can use them to destroy her. Every document, every photograph, every transaction. You can bury her in legal proceedings, criminal charges, public humiliation. You can take everything she took from you and more. You can make her suffer the way she made you suffer. I won't stop you. I can't. I'm not there. But I want you to ask yourself one question. If you do this, who will you become? Audrey's vision blurred. She blinked, kept reading. Victoria is a thief, a liar, a manipulator. She took from me for years, and she'll try to take from you too. That's who she is. But that's not who you have to be. There's another way. Use enough to prove the truth. Not more, not less. Let the law do what the law does. Reclaim what's yours, but don't let the process turn you into her. I didn't leave you money because money can be taken. I didn't leave you the business because businesses can be stolen. I left you this house, the one place she never wanted, the one place I could be myself, and I left you a choice. That's the inheritance that matters. Audrey set the letter down. Her hands were shaking now. The tremor ran up her arms, into her shoulders, down her spine. She thought about the last 3 days, the files she'd read, the plans she'd made, the way she'd sat in Dawson's office and imagined Victoria's face when the evidence came out, the satisfaction she'd felt, the hunger she had wanted to destroy her, not just expose her, destroy her. And her father had known she would. He had known. And he had written this letter. And he had hidden it where she would find it, only after she'd already tasted what power felt like. The heat started in her face, spread down her neck. Her cheeks burned. Her ears burned. She had told Dawson she would think about it, but she hadn't been thinking. She had been planning, rehearsing what she would say when Victoria was arrested, imagining the headlines, the mugshot, the ruin. She had felt righteous, justified, better than them, and her father had seen through all of it, from beyond the grave. He had looked at his daughter and known exactly what she would become if no one stopped her. The same as Victoria. Audrey pressed her palms against her eyes. Her breath came in short, jagged bursts. She had stood in that basement feeling dangerous, feeling like she finally had control. And she had liked it. She had liked the way it felt to hold someone's destruction in her hands. That wasn't justice. That was revenge wearing a better suit. The shame crawled through her like something alive, hot and cold at the same time. She could feel it in her stomach, in her throat, behind her eyes. All this time, she had told herself she was the victim, the wrong daughter, the one who deserved to fight back. And maybe that was true. But somewhere along the way, fighting back had turned into something else, something uglier. She had become exactly what she hated. The folder slipped from her lap. Papers scattered across the concrete floor. She didn't pick them up. She thought about Victoria at the reading, the way she hadn't looked at Audrey once, the confidence in her posture, the certainty that she had won. She thought about Marcus laughing. She had wanted to make them pay for that, not just lose what they'd stolen. She had wanted them humiliated, exposed, destroyed, the same way they had made her feel. Audrey pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around them, made herself as small as possible in the corner of the room her father had built. The concrete was cold through her jeans. The single bulb above her head buzzed. The filing cabinet stood against the wall like witnesses. She had come here with nothing. And in 3 days, she had turned into someone who fantasized about ruining people, who felt pleasure at the thought of watching someone lose everything. Her father had trusted her, and she had almost proved him wrong. She stayed on the floor for a long time. The light faded in the window wells above. She didn't turn on another lamp, just sat in the growing dark. The scattered papers around her, the letter face down where it had fallen. When she finally moved, her legs were stiff, her back ached, her eyes felt raw and swollen. She picked up the letter, read the last part. I didn't leave you money because money can be taken. I didn't leave you the business because businesses can be stolen. I left you this house, and I left you a choice. That's the inheritance that matters. Your father. She picked up the other document, the will. This one was older than the one Dawson had, dated 5 years ago, written entirely in her father's hand. To my daughter, Audrey, I leave everything I have, not because she earned it, not because she deserves it more than anyone else, but because I trust her to know the difference between what's right and what feels good. That's the only thing I've ever wanted for her, to know the difference, and to choose right, even when wrong is easier. She read it again and again. He had trusted her. She folded the letter, placed it back in the folder, gathered the scattered pages from the floor. She climbed the stairs, walked to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and drank it standing at the sink. Through the window, Helen Mercer's porch light was on, a single yellow glow in the darkness. 20 days until the preliminary hearing. 20 days to decide. She had 2 wills, one forged, one real. She had 48 folders of evidence. She had a lawyer ready to fight, and she had a choice. She could walk into that courtroom and destroy Victoria completely. Every crime, every lie, every stolen dollar, or she could use just enough, prove the forgery, reclaim the estate, let the system handle the rest. Her father's handwriting stared up at her from the page. If you do this, who will you become? 20 days. She had 20 days to find out. The courtroom smelled like wood polish and old paper. Morning light came through tall windows, casting long rectangles across the floor. Audrey sat at the plaintiff's table, a stack of folders in front of her, Dawson beside her, reviewing notes. Across the aisle, Victoria Hale sat with her lawyer, gray suit, pearl earrings, her hair pulled back tight. She hadn't looked at Audrey once since entering the room. Marcus sat in the gallery behind his mother, arms crossed, the same expression he'd worn at the reading. The judge entered. Silver hair, reading glasses on a chain around his neck. He settled into his chair and opened a file. This is a preliminary hearing regarding the estate of Robert Allen Hale. We have a petition challenging the validity of the submitted will and a counter motion to dismiss. Let's hear from the respondent first. Victoria's lawyer stood. Richard Crane, the same man who had come to the house with his envelope and his threats. Your Honor, this petition is baseless. Miss Hale has been living illegally in a property subject to county condemnation. She has removed items from the estate without authorization. She has interfered with probate proceedings that were proceeding normally until her arrival. He paused. We ask that this petition be dismissed and that Miss Hale be ordered to vacate the Millbrook property immediately. The judge made a note. Mr. Dawson. Dawson stood. His movements were slow, deliberate. Your Honor, my client isn't here to disrupt anything. She's here because the will submitted to probate is a forgery, murmurs from the gallery. The judge raised an eyebrow. That's a serious allegation? It is, and we have evidence to support it. Crane was on his feet. Your Honor, this is a delay tactic. The will was properly executed and witnessed. Then you won't mind if we examine it more closely. Dawson opened his briefcase. I have here a will executed by Robert Hale 3 years before his death. Notarized, witnessed, filed with my office for safekeeping. He handed the document to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. This will leave the entirety of the estate to Audrey Hale. Not Victoria, not Marcus. Everything to his daughter. The judge studied the document. Victoria's posture changed, a stiffening in her shoulders, her hands flat on the table. I also have documentation showing that the signature on the submitted will was forged. Dawson pulled another folder. Handwriting analysis, comparison samples. The differences are clear. He handed over the folder. The judge examined it. Silence. Audrey could hear her own heartbeat. Victoria leaned toward Crane, whispered something. Her voice carried, "That's impossible. There is no other will." The judge looked up. Mrs. Hale, you'll have your chance to respond, Dawson continued. Your Honor, we're not asking for an immediate ruling on the estate. We're asking for a stay on the county violation order while the will is investigated. We're asking that the submitted will be subjected to forensic analysis. And we're asking that Victoria Hale be called for deposition. Crane stood again. Your Honor, this is nothing but speculation. Mr. Crane, the judge's voice was sharp. I've seen enough to warrant further investigation. The differences between these signatures are significant. He paused. If the submitted will is authentic, forensic analysis will confirm it. If it's not, he let the sentence hang. The judge turned to Audrey. Miss Hale, do you have anything to add? Audrey stood. Her legs were steady, her voice clear. Only that I'm asking for the truth to be examined. Nothing more. She sat down. Dawson glanced at her, a question in his eyes. She knew what he was asking. She had 47 more folders: wire fraud, tax evasion, tax. Years of theft documented in precise detail. She could hand it all over right now. Watch Victoria's world collapse in real time. Her father's words echoed, "If you do this, who will you become?" She kept her hands on the table. The folders stayed closed. The judge made his ruling. The county violation was stayed pending investigation. The submitted will would be subjected to forensic analysis. Victoria Hale was ordered to appear for deposition in 30 days. All estate assets were frozen until further notice. Victoria's face went pale, then red. Her jaw worked, but no words came out. Marcus stood up in the gallery. "This is ridiculous. She's manipulating." "Sit down, Mr. Hale, or I'll have you removed." Marcus sat. His hands were shaking. The judge adjourned. People began to move. Voices filled the room. Audrey stayed seated. She looked across at Victoria. Their eyes met for the first time. Victoria's expression was strange. Not anger, not hatred, something else. Confusion. She had expected Audrey to destroy her, to pull out everything, to make this brutal and complete. And Audrey hadn't. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it, looked away. Crane gathered his papers, whispered to Victoria. They stood, walked out, without looking back. Marcus followed. He did look back. Once. His face was pale. Dawson touched Audrey's shoulder. "You did good." "Did I?" "You could have buried her today. Criminal referral, public exposure, everything. I know. But you didn't." Audrey picked up her folders, the ones she hadn't opened. "My father asked me a question. I had to answer it." They walked out of the courtroom together. The hallway was bright. People moved past, absorbed in their own business. Helen Mercer stood near the exit. She had been in the gallery, watching. She nodded at Audrey. A small movement. Then she turned and walked out. Outside. The sun was warm. Audrey stood on the courthouse steps and let it hit her face. She had won the first round. The investigation would proceed. The truth would come out. Victoria would face consequences. But Audrey hadn't become the thing she hated. She hadn't used power to humiliate. She had used it to reveal. That was different. Dawson came up beside her. "What now?" "I go back to the house. Wait for the investigation. And the other files, the fraud charges." Audrey thought about it. 47 folders. Enough to put Victoria away for years. If the investigation finds what we know it'll find, the district attorney will have questions. I'll answer them honestly. She paused. "But I'm not handing over everything just to watch her suffer." Dawson studied her. "Your father would be proud." "Maybe." She walked down the steps, toward her car, toward the house that had started as punishment and become something else. The phone in her pocket buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. "You think you've won. You haven't. This isn't over." No signature, no name, but she knew. Audrey looked back at the courthouse. Victoria's car was pulling out of the parking lot. The windows were tinted. She couldn't see inside. The phone buzzed again. "Ask Helen Mercer what she knows about your father's death." 2 months later, the roof no longer sagged. Audrey had hired a contractor from the next town over. He'd brought a crew of 3, and they'd worked for 2 weeks. New shingles, new gutters. The chimney repointed. She stood in the front yard, looking up at the house. The broken windows were replaced. The porch no longer tilted. Fresh paint on the trim white. The same color it had been in old photographs she'd found in the attic. The grass was cut short now. She'd done that herself. Borrowed a mower from Helen. Inside, the house smelled different. Paint and sawdust instead of mold and decay. The kitchen had new appliances. The bathroom worked. Electricity ran through every room. It was still old, still creaky in places, but it was alive again. The investigation had moved forward. The forensic analysis confirmed what Audrey already knew. The signature on Victoria's will was forged. The district attorney had opened a criminal investigation. Wire fraud, document forgery, tax evasion. The evidence from the basement had been subpoenaed. Victoria was out on bond. The trial wouldn't be for months, maybe a year. But the assets were still frozen. The business was under audit. Marcus had been questioned twice. Audrey didn't follow the news closely. She read updates when Dawson sent them. Otherwise, she focused on the house, on rebuilding. A knock at the door. Helen Mercer stood on the porch. She held a casserole dish covered in foil. Thought you might be hungry. Audrey took the dish. Come in. They sat at the kitchen table. The same table that had been here when Audrey arrived. But cleaned now. Polished. 2 cups of coffee between them. The place looks good, Helen said. Your father would have liked it. I hope so. Helen wrapped her hands around her cup. Steam rose between them. I got a text, Audrey said. The day of the hearing. It said to ask you what you know about my father's death. Helen's face didn't change. She took a sip of coffee. Set the cup down. I wondered when that would come up. Was it Victoria? Probably. Or someone working for her, trying to throw you off. Throw me off from what? Helen looked at her. Old eyes. Clear and steady. Your father died of a heart attack. That part is true. But Victoria knew it was coming. The doctors had told him months before. He didn't tell her. But she found out anyway. Read his medical files. Knew he had maybe a year. Audrey's grip tightened on her cup. She moved faster after that. The will, the transfers. She knew she had to finish before he did. Helen paused. Some people think she could have helped him that night. He was alone in the house, the other house. The one she got, and she was out. Didn't come home until morning. By then, he was gone. The kitchen was quiet. A bird sang somewhere outside. Are you saying she let him die? I'm saying she didn't try to save him. There's a difference. Legally, Helen's voice was flat. I can't prove it. Nobody can. But I know what I know. Audrey sat with that, the weight of it settling. Why didn't you tell me before? Because it would have made you angry. Made you want revenge. Helen met her eyes. I watched you in that courtroom. I saw what you chose not to do. Your father was right about you. Right about what? He said you were the only honest thing he ever made. She reached across the table. Her hand covered Audrey's. Warm. Dry. Papery with age. You didn't become her. That's what matters. They sat in silence. The coffee cooled. I helped him, Helen said finally. With the room, the files, he needed someone to know. In case something happened before you came, I promised I'd watch, make sure the right person found it. And if the wrong person had come, I had a key to the cellar. I would have moved everything. Audrey thought about the break-in. The scratches on the lock, the folders out of order. You were protecting it. I was protecting you. And even before I met you, Helen smiled. Small, sad. That's what your father asked me to do. She finished her coffee, stood to leave at the door. She turned back. He loved you, Audrey. He wasn't good at showing it. He made mistakes, but everything he did at the end, the house, the files, the letters, it was all for you. So you could have a choice he never had. She walked across the yard to her own house. The screen door banged shut behind her. Audrey stood in the doorway for a long time. That evening, she went to the attic, found the box she'd set aside weeks ago. Inside, photographs, old ones. Her father as a young man, her mother, who had died when Audrey was 3, and one photo she hadn't looked at closely before. Her father standing in front of this house, smiling, younger than she ever remembered him, the paint fresh, the garden green, the porch straight and solid. She carried the photo downstairs, found a frame in one of the unpacked boxes, set it on the mantelpiece in the living room. For the first time, the house had a picture of her family. She walked outside, sat on the porch steps. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. The garden she'd started was beginning to show green tomatoes, beans, herbs, things that would grow. Helen waved from her porch. Audrey waved back. The investigation would continue. The trial would happen. Victoria would face consequences. Maybe prison. Maybe not. Audrey didn't know any more if that mattered. What mattered was this: she had come here with nothing. No money, no family, no sense of who she was beyond what others had told her. Now she had a house, a neighbor who had become something like a friend, a lawyer who believed in her, and a choice she had made not to destroy, but to reveal, not to become the thing she hated, but to stay herself. Her father had asked her a question. She had answered it. The sky darkened. Stars appeared, one by one. She sat on the porch and watched them come out, the way her father must have done, years ago, in this same spot. She didn't need the money. She didn't need victory. She had something better. She knew who she was. There's a quiet that comes after a story like this one. Not empty, just still. The kind that settles somewhere in the chest and stays for a while. Maybe you felt it too. That familiar weight of being overlooked, of standing in a room where no one turned to look at you, of wondering whether the people who were supposed to love you ever really saw you at all. Many of us have carried something like that. Some of us still do. The ache of loving someone who couldn't show it back. The long years of wondering if we mattered. The slow work of rebuilding after being torn down. These feelings don't need to be fixed. They don't need to make sense or lead somewhere tidy. They're allowed to simply be, to rest, to stay unresolved if that's where they are. Not everything closes neatly. Not every wound heals the same way. And that's all right. Some things we carry forward, just a little lighter than before. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying until the end.